Part 3. Laws relating to the practical duties of master and mariners. Chapter 1. The Vessel. Title: Bill of Sale, Registry, Enrollment, License, Documents, Certificates, Passport. Sea Letter, List of Crew, Bill of Health, General Clearance, Clearing Manifest, Invoice, Bill of Lading, Charter Party, Logbook, Manifest, List of Passengers and Crew, Remaining Sea Stores, Medicine Chest, Provisions. Title: The bill of sale is the proper evidence of title to all vessels. It is the instrument of transfer which is used in all maritime countries, which courts of law look to for proof of title, and which is in most cases absolutely required. Footnote 1. 5 Rob ad 155, 1 Mason 139, 2 Mason 435, 4 Mason 390, 16 Mass 336, 7 Johns 308, but see 3 Pick 89, 16 Mass 663. Possession of the vessel should also accompany the bill of sale, whenever it is practicable. If the bill of sale is transferred while the vessel is at sea, possession should be taken immediately upon her arrival in port. The fact of the bill of sale being with one person and the actual possession of the vessel with another, after there has been an opportunity to transfer it, will raise a presumption of fraud, and make the parties liable to losses and difficulties in dealing with creditors, and such as purchase in good faith. Footnote 1. 4 Mass 663, 4 Mason 183, Pick 4, 6 Mass 422, 15 Mass 477, 18 Mass 389. Title in England. Title: The bill of sale would not of itself be considered satisfactory evidence of the title to a ship or vessel, exercising the privileges of a British ship. It should, in all cases, be accompanied by a proper certificate of registry. See the Register Act 3 and 4, W4, C55, S34. And it should be ascertained that the parties in the actual possession of the ship or vessel, or who would be entitled to such possession on her arrival in port, are the same as are named as owners in the registry. When the ship is here, in the country of its owners, and a delivery of actual possession is possible, such delivery is necessary to give a perfect title to the buyer in case of a sale of the whole ship. And if the buyer suffers the seller to remain in possession and act as owner, and the seller should have an execution issued against him, or should become bankrupt before the buyer takes possession, the property may be considered as remaining in the seller, and seized and disposed of accordingly. See 6 Go4 C16 S70. Abbott on Shipping, 6th edition, by Sergeant Shee, 14, and the authorities there cited. Title of mortgagee, etc. The claim of a mortgagee of a ship or vessel, or any share or shares thereof, is not preferred to that of the general creditors, unless he has taken care on lending his money, that his debt and security shall appear in the book of registry, and on the back of the certificate. See 3 and 4 W4, C55, S42, 43. Abbott on Shipping, 6th edition, 16. And a mortgagee or trustee for sale of a ship or vessel for payment of debts, whose mortgage or assignment shall have been duly registered, is not to be deemed as owner, nor his interest to be affected by the subsequent bankruptcy of the mortgager or assigner, on the ground of reputed ownership. 3 and 4, W4, C55, S42, 43. Registry, Enrollment, and License. The laws of the United States have given many privileges to vessels built, owned, and commanded by our own citizens. Such vessels are entitled to be registered, enrolled, or licensed, according to circumstances, and are thereupon considered vessels of the United States, entitled to the benefits and privileges appertaining to such ships. The only vessels entitled to a register are those built in the United States and owned wholly by citizens thereof. Vessels captured in war by our citizens and condemned as prizes, and vessels adjudged to be forfeited for breach of the laws of the United States, being wholly owned by such citizens. No owner is compelled to register his vessel, but unless registered, with the exception of those enrolled and licensed in the coasting and fishing trades, she is not entitled to the privileges and benefits of a vessel of the United States, although she be built, owned, and commanded by citizens thereof. Footnote 1. Act 1792, Chapter 45, Section 1. Vessels employed wholly in the whale fishery, owned by an incorporated company, may be registered, so long as they shall be wholly employed therein. Footnote 2. Act 1831, Chapter 350, Section 1. If not so owned and registered, they must be enrolled and licensed. Footnote 3. 3 Summer 342. 2 Law Rep 146 Contra. The name of every registered vessel and the port to which she belongs must be painted on her stern, on a black ground, in white letters, of not less than 3 inches in length. And if any registered vessel is found without her name and the name of her port so painted, the owners thereof forfeit $50. Footnote 4. Act 1792, Chapter 45, Section 3. In order to the obtaining of a register, oath must be made that the master is a citizen of the United States. Footnote 5. Act 1831, Chapter 350, Section 4, Section 12. If the master of a registered vessel is changed, or if the vessel's name is altered, such fact must be endorsed upon the register at the custom house. Otherwise, she will cease to be considered a vessel of the United States. Footnote 6. Act 1792, Chapter 45, Section 23. If any certificate of registry is fraudulently or knowingly used for any ship or vessel not at the time entitled to it, such ship or vessel, with her tackle, apparel, and furniture, shall be forfeited to the United States. Footnote 7. Act 1831, Chapter 350, Section 27. If an enrolled or licensed vessel is about to proceed on a foreign voyage, she must surrender her enrollment and license and take out a register, or she, together with her cargo, will be liable to forfeiture. Footnote 8. Act 1793, Chapter 52, Section 8. In case of the loss of a register, the master may make oath to the fact and obtain a new one. All vessels engaged in the coasting and fishing trades above 20 tons burden, in order to be entitled to the privileges of vessels of the United States in those trades, must be enrolled and licensed, and if less than 20 tons, must be licensed. Act 1793, Chapter 52, Section 1. The same qualifications and requisites in all respects are demanded in order to the enrolling and licensing of a vessel, which are required for registering. Act 1793, Chapter 52, Section 2. The name must be painted on the stern in the same manner, under penalty of $20. Act 1793, Chapter 52, Section 11. If any vessel licensed for the fisheries engages in any other business not expressly allowed by the license, she is forfeited. Act 1793, Chapter 52, Section 32. Vessels, however, licensed for the mackerel trade are not forfeited in consequence of having been engaged in catching cod or other fish, but they are not entitled to the bounty allowed to vessels in the cod fisheries. Acts 1828, Chapter 119, Section 1, and 1836, Chapter 55, Section 1. The officers and at least 3/4 of the crew of every fishing vessel must be American citizens, or they can recover none of the bounties. Act 1817, Chapter 204, Section 3. Registry, enrollment, and license in England. Registry. The laws of England have given similar privileges to ships or vessels entitled to be registered as British vessels. For an enumeration of these privileges, and for the particular provisions and directions as to the registry of ships, see the Register Act 3 and 4, W4, Chapter 55. According to this act, if a ship or vessel not being duly registered and not having obtained a proper certificate of registry shall exercise the privileges of a British ship, the same is subject to forfeiture and may be seized by any officer of the customs. S4. And by the Navigation Act 3 and 4 W4 C54, it is enacted that no ship shall be admitted to be a British ship unless duly registered and navigated as such. S12. But British-built boats or vessels under 15 tons burden, wholly owned and navigated by British subjects, although not registered as British ships, shall be admitted to be British ship vessels in all navigation in the rivers and upon the coasts of the United Kingdom, or of the British possessions abroad, not proceeding over sea, except within the limits of the respective colonial governments within which the managing owners of such vessels respectively reside. And all British-built boats or vessels wholly owned and navigated by British subjects, not exceeding the burthen of 30 tons, and not having a whole or a fixed deck, and being employed solely in fishing on the banks and shores of Newfoundland and of the parts adjacent, or on the banks and shores of the provinces of Canada, Nova Scotia, or New Brunswick, adjacent to the Gulf of St. Lawrence, or on the north of Cape Canso, or of the islands within the same, or in trading coastwise within the said limits, shall be admitted to be British boats or vessels, although not registered, so long as such boats or vessels shall be solely so employed. S13. And all ships built in the British settlements at Honduras, and owned and navigated as British ships, shall be entitled to the privileges of British registered ships in all direct trade between the United Kingdom or the British possessions in America and the said settlements, provided the master shall produce a certificate under the hand of the superintendent of those settlements, that satisfactory proof has been made before him that such ship, describing the same, was built in the said settlements, and is wholly owned by British subjects. Provided also that the time of the clearance of such ship from the said settlements for every voyage shall be endorsed upon such certificate by such superintendent. S14. The ships or vessels entitled to be registered are such only as are wholly of the built of the United Kingdom, or of the Isle of Man, or of Guernsey or Jersey, or of some of the colonies, plantations, islands, or territories in Asia, Africa, or America, or of Malta, Gibraltar, or Heligoland, which belonged to Her Majesty at the time of the building of such ships or vessels, or such ships or vessels as shall have been condemned in any court of admiralty as prize of war, or condemned in any competent court as forfeited for the breach of the laws made for the prevention of the slave trade, and which belong to Her Majesty's subjects duly entitled to be owners of registered ships or vessels. See Register Act 3 and 4, W4, C55, S5. The name of a registered ship or vessel cannot be changed, and the owner or owners, before taking in any cargo, must cause to be painted in white or yellow letters, of a length of not less than 4 inches upon a black background, or some conspicuous part of the stern, the name by which such ship or vessel shall have been registered, and the port to which she belongs, in a distinct and legible manner, and must so preserve the same. Penalty for omission, etc. £100. Register Act 3 and 4, W4, C55, S24. No registry can be made or certificate obtained until the owner or owners shall, in the manner directed by the Act, make a declaration as to the name of the ship, her port and master, the description of the ship, the name, occupation, and residence of every part owner, with other particulars tending to prove them to be subjects of Her Majesty. 3 and 4, W4, C55, S13. A bond is required to be given at the time of registry by the master and owner or owners, in a penalty varying in proportion to the burthen of a ship, but never exceeding £1,000. And such bond is to be as a security that the certificate shall not be lent, sold, or disposed of, but solely used for the service of the ship for which it is granted, and shall be given up within a month in certain cases specified in the Act. If the master cannot attend at the time of registry, by reason of the absence of himself and the ship at some other port, a separate bond may be given by him at the port where the ship may then be. S20. No greater number than 32 persons are entitled to be legal owners at one and the same time as tenants in common, or to be registered as such. This, however, is not to affect the equitable title of minors, heirs, legatees, creditors, or others exceeding that number, duly represented by or holding from any of the persons within the said number registered as legal owners by any shares, S33. Partners in trade are to be considered as one person only in estimating such number, S32. When the master of a registered ship shall be changed, a memorandum of such change must be endorsed upon the certificate of registry, and the new master must give a bond in the like penalties and under the same conditions as are contained in the bond required to be given at the time of registry, S21. Documents. Every registered vessel should have a certificate of registry. Act 1792, Chapter 45. This is an abstract of the record of registry, showing the names and residences of the owners, the place where the vessel was built, with a particular description of the vessel. This document shows the national character of the vessel, and is important to prove neutrality in time of war between other powers. For the same reasons, an enrolled vessel should have a certificate of enrollment. Act 1793, Chapter 52. Vessels bound to Europe should have passports. A passport is a permission from the government for the vessel to go upon her voyage, and contains a description of the vessel, crew, etc., and the name of the master. Vessels bound round Cape Horn or the Cape of Good Hope should have sea letters. These contain a description of the cargo, etc., and are written in 4 languages: English, French, Dutch, and Spanish. The 2 latter documents are rendered necessary or expedient by reason of treaties with foreign powers. Every vessel should have a list of crew. This specifies the name, age, place of birth, and residence, etc. of each one of the ship's company, and is of course very useful when sailing among belligerents. The other documents are the bill of health, general clearance, clearing manifest, invoice, and bill of lading for the cargo, charter party if one has been given, and the logbook. On entering the custom house, the papers required in addition to these are the manifest, list of passengers and crew, and of remaining sea stores. Documents in England. Documents. The certificate of registry specifies the name, occupation, and residence of every owner in the proportions mentioned on the back of it, the name of the ship, the place to which she belongs, her tonnage, the name of the master, the time and place of the built or of condemnation, the name of the surveying officer, the number of decks and masts, the length, breadth, height between decks, if more than one, or depth of the hold, if only one deck, whether rigged with a standing or running bowsprit, the description of her stern, whether carvel or clinker built, and gallery and kind of head, if there be any. And on the back are endorsed the names of the several owners, with the number of 64th shares held by each, 3 and 4, W4, C55, S2, Abaddon Shipping, 6th edition, 61. The master must procure and keep on board all the papers and documents required for the manifestation and protection of the ship and cargo, by the law of the countries from and to which the ship is bound, and by the law of nations in general, and treaties between particular states. Abaddon Shipping, 6th edition, 302. The documents and papers expected to be found on board a neutral ship are 1. The passport, sea brief, or sea letter. 2. The proofs of property, bill of sale, etc. 3. The muster roll. 4. The charter party. 5. The bills of lading. 6. The invoice. 7. The logbook. 8. The bill of health. See Marshal on Insurance. Book 1, C9, S6. As to the manifest or written contents required for the importation of goods into Great Britain, see 6G4, C107, sections 3 through 7. As to the coasting trade, see same stat, sections 100 through 114. Abaddon Shipping, 6th edition, 302, N. Medicine chest. Every vessel belonging to citizens of the United States, of the burden of 150 tons or upwards, navigated by 10 or more persons in the whole, and bound on a foreign voyage, must be provided with a medicine chest, put up by some apothecary of known reputation, and accompanied by directions for using the same. This chest must be examined and refitted by the same or some other apothecary at least once in a year. Act 1790, Chapter 56, Section 8. The same rule applies to vessels of 75 tons and upwards, navigated by 6 persons in the whole and bound to the West Indies. Act 1805, Chapter 88, Section 1. Medicine chest in England. Medicine chest. By the Act 5 and 6 W4 C19 S12, every ship bound on a foreign voyage is required to have and keep constantly on board a sufficient supply of medicines suitable to accidents and diseases arising on sea voyages. National character of crew. In order to be placed upon the most favorable footing as to duties, bounties, etc., it is necessary that the master, officers, and 2/3 of the rest of the crew of vessels in the foreign trade, and officers and 3/4 of the crew of fishing and coasting vessels, should be citizens or persons not the subjects of any foreign prince or state. Act 1817, Chapter 204, Sections 3, 5, and 6. Nevertheless, while foreigners are employed in our vessels, they are under the protection of our laws as mariners and seamen of the United States. Sumner, 115. National character of crew in England. National character of crew. Every British registered ship is required to be navigated in every part of the world by a master who is a British subject, and by a crew whereof 3/4 at least are British seamen. And if such ship be employed in a coasting voyage from one part of the United Kingdom to another, or in a voyage between the United Kingdom and the islands of Guernsey, Jersey, Alderney, Sark, or Man, or from one of the said vessels to another of them, or from one part of either of them to another of the same, or be employed in fishing on the coasts of the United Kingdom, or of any of the said islands, then the whole of the crew shall be British seamen. See Navigation Act 3 and 4, W4, C54, S13. It is provided, however, that a ship not required to be wholly navigated by British seamen shall be deemed duly navigated by one British seaman for every 20 tons of her burthen, although the number of other seamen shall exceed 1/4 of the whole crew. S16. As to the persons qualified to be master of a British ship, or to be or considered as British seamen within the Act, see sections 16 and 17. Provisions. Every vessel of the United States bound on a voyage across the Atlantic shall, at the time of the leaving of the last port from which she sails, have on board, well secured under deck, at least 60 gallons of water, 100 pounds of salted beef, and 100 pounds of wholesome ship bread, for every person on board, over and above any stores that the master or passengers may have put on board, and in like proportions for shorter or longer voyages. If any vessel is not so provided, and the crew are put upon short allowance of bread, flesh, or water, they can recover an additional day's wages for every day they are so allowanced. Act 1790, Chapter 56, Section 9. Provisions in England. Provisions. The master of every outward-bound ship shall, upon application to an officer called the searcher, receive a victualling bill for the shipment of such stores as he may require, and as shall be allowed by the collector and controller for the use of the ship, according to the voyage upon which she is about to depart. And no articles taken on board shall be deemed to be stores, except such as shall be borne on such victualling bill. 3 and 4, W4, C52, S63. Passengers. The same provision, with the addition of 1 gallon of vinegar, must be made for every passenger, and if, in default of these, the passengers are put on short allowance, each passenger can recover $3 for every day he is so allowanced. Act 1819, Chapter 170, Section 3. If any vessel takes on board a greater number of passengers than 2 for every 5 tons, custom house measurement, the master forfeits $150 for every such passenger, and if the number by which they exceed 2 for every 5 tons shall amount to 20, the vessel becomes forfeited. Act 1819, Chapter 170, Sections 1 and 2. Passengers in England. Passengers. Every ship carrying passengers from any port or place in the United Kingdom, or in the islands of Guernsey, Jersey, Alderney, Sark, or Man, or any voyage to or for any port or place out of Europe, and not being within the Mediterranean Sea, must have on board good and wholesome provisions for the use and consumption of the passengers, over and above the victualling of the crew, to the amount or in the proportion following, viz., a supply of pure water to the amount of 5 gallons to every week of the computed voyage for every passenger, such water being carried in tanks or sweet casks, and a supply of bread, biscuit, oatmeal, or breadstuffs, to the amount of 7 pounds weight to every week of the computed voyage for every such passenger. But to the extent of 1/3 of such supply, 7 pounds weight of potatoes may be deemed equivalent to 1 pound weight of bread, biscuit, oatmeal, or breadstuffs, in the supply of any ship bound to some place in North America. And when any ship shall be destined to call at a port or place in the course of her voyage, for the purpose of filling up her water, a supply of water at the rate before mentioned for every week of the computed voyage to such port or place of calling will be sufficient. The number of weeks deemed necessary for the voyage of any such ship, according to her destination, shall be determined by the following rule of computation. For a voyage to North America, 10 weeks. South America on the Atlantic Ocean or to the west coast of Africa, 12 weeks. The Cape of Good Hope, 15 weeks. The Mauritius, 18 weeks. And for any other voyage, 24 weeks. See the Act 5 and 6, W4, C53, for regulating the carriage of passengers from the United Kingdom, Section 3 and 4, and 1 and 2, Vict. C. 113, S. 26, as to foreign vessels. And no such ship is allowed to proceed on her voyage with more persons than in the proportion of 3 persons for every 5 tons of the registered burthen of such ship, the master and crew being included in such number. The ship carrying such passengers is required to have a height of 5 feet and a half between decks, and when only 2 tiers of berths, there shall be an interval of 6 inches, at the least, between the deck or platform and the floor of the lower tier, throughout the whole extent thereof, 5 and 6, W4, C53, S2. For the other regulations now in force on this important subject, the reader is referred to the Act itself. But from this Act is expressly accepted all ships in which the number of passengers shall not exceed 1 for every 5 tons of their registered burthens, S20. Penalties from £5 to £20 are imposed upon the master for non-compliance with the regulations, without prejudice to any right of action the passenger may have in respect of the breach, or non-performance of any contract between him and the master and owners, S17. For the regulations as to the carriage of passengers between Great Britain and Ireland, see the Act 4, G4, C88.